It's Phil X, and you're watching Guitar Tales with Dave Cohen. And Guitar Tales, guitar tales. Like, what else do you need, right? Guitar. We're geeks, nerds, gear, inspirations, positive vibes. Look out.
There are just certain shows where I can pinch myself. You could almost see I've got goosebumps right now. Where Scott and I have the privilege of having someone on the show who is central to the history of rock and roll, who is a piece of the history, whose words are important to that history, and probably more importantly, whose words will be really entertaining toward hearing about that history. You'll meet him in just a second, but this is a super special show. Scott and I both listened to the audiobook, which is fabulous. I will not even say his name yet. But first, let's thank our fabulous, fabulous sponsors who keep us on the air. First, we have to do it now. Confections of a Rock Star. How lucky are we to have a bakery that is from our rock and roll community right here in Asbury Park, really close to Scott, pretty darn close to me. And they feed people, they feed our music, and they feed our dogs with their pup cakes. It's a great place. And in that same fabulous building that is a favorite of Alice Cooper, you've got the best burgers around, Little Andy's Burgers. They have a great affiliation. Look at those kids. They're very happy. The burger is amazing. The covered fries are absolutely amazing. So we have people from our rock and roll community really supporting us. And I got to say, Scott has worked so hard to get us ready for this show. He was flipping out over the audiobook, and he said, Dave, you have to. And I bought it, and I'm so glad I did. I'm about 4 or 5 chapters in. And my favorite thing about it, just like Bruce's autobiography, when the person who lived that life reads it, to me, it just adds so much more than even the best of actors could. Scott, why don't you come in? Scott Guitarmist Engel, our co-host, our publicist extraordinaire, the one who did more work than anyone. Thank you for setting this up, Scott. This is just unbelievable.
I'm really excited about it. I am really enjoying the audiobook, and I got the hard copy as well, and you'll see we'll talk about that. It's not a paperback little tiny, it's a hardcover, seriously thick, nice book.
Yeah.
A lot of content, tons of content. We'll talk to Steve Rosen is our guest tonight, if you haven't mentioned it or guessed it by now, who wrote Tone Chaser, and discussing his 26-year friendship with the great Edward Van Halen. I want to know if he calls him Edward, Eddie, or, I don't know. They do talk about that in the book, but I know he was reluctant to call him Eddie, and he was referring to him as Edward. I thought that there's so many little tidbits like that in the book, Dave.
It is so wonderful. We can't talk. We'll cover the English teacher in a bit.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Steve was a little upset with him.
Yeah. All right. So let's pull our phenomenal guest
Steve in here.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
How you guys doing?
Great. I'm in a great mood.
Yeah.
Right.
We got off a little bit of a rough start tonight, and I don't know if Dave wants to talk about it, but he had some technical issues on his end, and he was running very late.
Yeah, I in my day job as a lawyer, I had a bunch of things and then hooking up. So I was still connecting about 60 seconds before you logged in.
Wow.
Yeah, but we're all good now.
And I also need to change our background to celebrate the life and friendship of Edward with Steve by changing our background to that iconic pattern. If Ed did anything in his life, forget playing great guitar and being a great person, if he just created this pattern as a piece of art, it's historical, right? Everybody, I've seen mailboxes painted with this. I've seen cars painted with this. Fans all over the world, this creation of his of masking tape and spray paint and whatever he was doing in that workshop of his to come up with this. When he already had a good color, right? He had the black and white Stratocaster thing, Steve, when you first met him, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the first one, and then he painted over that one, and yeah, we talked about that. You bring up an interesting point. Had Edward done nothing else, and we will get into Eddie, Edward, and I'll straighten out you fellas if you call him by the wrong name here. Had he done nothing else really than build his own guitar, it would have been enough, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that he built his guitar, heard something in his head, and was able to translate that into wood and pickups, and then played the guitar. It's one thing to build it and but to actually be able to play it and get those kinds of sounds out of it, to me, I mean, that's really, I don't know what else you call it besides genius,
Yeah.
And, right. Try to think, and I did spend some time trying to think about it. How many guitar players through history have done what Edward did? Built their own guitar and played them. Now, not signature guitars, not Gibson doing a Slash signature model, which is fair enough because Slash might have changed out pickups in a Les Paul or whatever. But somebody who built the guitar,
talking to somebody that when I did this Van Halen tribute, Frankenstrat, it was crazy what goes on with that guitar, and I gotta say, just bolting the pickup directly to the body, and just having a tone and a volume control and wiring it directly to the pot and all this kind of stuff. It really sounds incredible, I have to say.
It does, and you think that and I talked to him, and he goes, "Oh well, it's not too hard to put a neck onto a body."
Yeah.
I go, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
I could put a neck onto a body, and I wouldn't get the guitar in tune past the first fret. But he calls it just kind of hit and miss. The truth of it is there was something innate in him to be able to,
by the way, we should tell our listeners and viewers that you are an accomplished guitar player. You kind of, I could see why you put yourself down a little bit, because you're sitting in the presence of Edward Van Halen and playing guitar. Suddenly you don't feel like that accomplished. I mean, it's like sitting in the room with Picasso and you show him your crayon drawing.
But, yeah. Well, I mean, really, what I wanted to be a guitar player in a rock and roll band, right? I mean, who didn't?
Yeah, we all.
And I tried, and I could just never figure out how to make any money at it.
The secret sauce, right?
Yeah, man. It was a tough one.
My father warned me it was a great hobby and not a great career. So I became a pharmacist who plays guitar, and hence the name guitarist.
There you go.
Pills pay the pills, we say in our house.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So,
but really enjoying the book. It's an archive of history. I mean, it's really important, not just for any Van Halen fan, for any music fan, anybody struggling to become the next great guitar player or artist. There's a lot of lessons to be learned there. Meeting your heroes, meeting your heroes. The Blackmore stuff had me laughing really hard on the way to work and stuff.
I think I might have a good opening sort of area for you to jump into, Steve.
Yeah, because there's so much. Where do we begin?
So one of the things that really grabbed me, and it's obviously in the beginning, was the honesty of your first impression, not your second impression, of that album. Everyone in the world is waiting for it to come out, and I'll let you put it in your own words, but it made your epiphany so much more powerful than just sort of like, oh, it's great. So tell us what happened. I'll set it up. You had met Edward on some occasions, then everyone's waiting with bated breath for the album to come out. Then you hear the album for the first time.
So you're really going to make me start on this precarious edge of the cliff, Dave. Thanks, pal. So it's 1977, July. and I'm at the Whiskey to see Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick is going to record a live record. It's like it's like a promo. Like I think the label just wanted to capture them live. I think they were at the Whiskey for a Friday and a Saturday. The next
Okay.
year, '78, of course, they would record live at Budokan, and they blow up. But in '77,
Right.
Cheap Trick was still playing, 200 seat clubs, all
Right.
over. So I'm there, and through a friend, a lady named Michelle Meyer, who booked the club, she introduces me to this guy who's upstairs in a dressing room.
Was he just hanging out? Is that why he was there, just hanging out?
Yeah. No. Edward was just. I had no idea he was going to be there, and the only reason I was there again was because I was a Cheap Trick fan. Now you have to understand, in 1977, just about every band that was playing the Whiskey, not every band, but most of them were punk bands. I was not a punk fan at all, so
Right.
I wasn't going to go to the Whiskey to see a punk band. Trick record a live record.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to. So she says, listen, there's somebody upstairs you need to meet. She knew I was writing for the guitar magazines. I was writing for a guitar player at that point. And Michelle sort of had her finger on the pulse of everything. She was a yenta of all things rock and roll in Hollywood, man. So if
Our
Michelle,
first Yiddish word, we're going to have a Yiddish count.
Exactly. So if
A
there was
drinking
somebody,
game.
there you go, L'chaim. There was somebody she wanted me to meet. I was going to meet him because I knew he would well. So we go upstairs and I see this guy standing in the corner. So again, this is July '77. There are no magazine articles. He's done no interviews.
Right.
I knew about Van Halen, of course, as this band that had gotten signed to Warner Brothers, that had been playing the Whiskey and the Starwood. The interesting thing is I had never seen Van Halen play. So somehow, even though I was at the Whiskey a lot, I never saw the band play. So I didn't know this guy, Edward Van Halen, at least as a guitar player. So we meet and we shake hands. And you asked me, we brought up earlier, Eddie Edward. He sort of introduced himself. Hi, I'm Edward. And typically the way someone introduces himself is typically how they want to be,
how they want to be called going forward. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I get a lot of Scott stuff,
Yeah. So he was
Scotty's
always
a little
Edward
boy.
to me. Yeah. And I think he liked Edward because it was a little more, well, it's much more formal than Ed or Eddie. And he did have sort of that classical background thing from
That's
his
true.
dad,
Yeah.
Ludwig, and so Edward sounded, a little more noble maybe. And so we talk, and the conversation was amazing. That first album is still 8 months away, right? That first record would not be released until February '78. It's July '77.
Did he reveal to you at that juncture that he was already signed with Warner Brothers and he had this band and he's, or that was still in the works?
No, that's about all I knew. I knew that they had signed the deal. I don't think that the record was actually done when we spoke in '77 in July. I don't think the record was done that early. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I can't remember asking him, "Oh, is the record done?" I do remember asking him, did you make a good record or something like that? He goes, I think we made a good record. I'm happy with it. And that humility would be sort of a signpost of his. I encountered that for as long as I knew him.
Right. I don't think he was ever comfortable with the guitar hero persona, and neither was Hendrix in a lot of interviews. If you ever saw the old Dick Cavett interview with Hendrix, he's very shy and he doesn't think much of his celebrity or his playing or his talent. And Ed comes off that way in the book and in the recordings with the audio book, the same kind of way, that humility that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And even beyond humility, I don't think he was, honestly, I don't think he was aware whatsoever of this shadow that he was casting. I mean, he really, honestly, he never seemed to understand what it was he was doing. February '78, I get the February record releases from Warner Brothers Records. I was on the labels. I was on the list for all the labels. So every month,
writing for the magazine, you would get those. Yeah,
exactly. One of the one of the perks.
Right.
Some of the swag from the labels, and you're writing for peanuts and all that, but you're getting free records and free tickets to concerts, right?
Yeah.
So I remember getting this record, and I'm looking, I go, oh, there's an Edward Van Halen guy, and the famous, the cover, the four guys, and I thought, wow, man, I got to put this on. So I put it on, and the first track, as we now know, is Running with the Devil, So I hear the gong, 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 dun, dun, dun. I'm thinking that's pretty cool, and I'm kind of listening, and then it kind of goes into the verse, and I'm thinking, not so good, So I was going to listen to all of it, but I kind of needle dropped, and I was highly unimpressed, man. Yeah. I did not get it, because every writer I was talking to, everybody said, you cannot believe when you hear this guy play. I mean, he sounds like nobody else. And I really thought, I honestly thought, and I write about it in the book, is that they sounded like a, not so good version of Deep Purple.
Right.
They were doing kind of those fast shuffles, but Purple did them infinitely better. Ritchie's riffs were 1,000 times better, and I just didn't think much of it, And so I was disappointed. And, so the next day I'm thinking, look, Rosen, you're missing something. I mean, the whole world thinks like this. And you think like this. Dude, come on.
It's funny you should say it. I have to agree. When I worked at the college radio station, they had the first record in their library. And the DJs would write notes right on the record from the promotional record, which a lot of times the back of it was just blank. Yeah. The promotional record. So the DJs would write, this is incredible. Listen to track 4. Listen to track 1. Listen to Eruption. And I got the same, like, this is supposed to be some massive guitar slinger, and the first song really has no massive guitar solo in it, right?
Yeah.
It's got the little jingle, which is nice, but it's not like you would call setting the world on fire as far as guitar playing goes.
Right.
So, but once I listened to Eruption, of course, that changed my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next day I sit down, big cup of coffee, and listen to it carefully and go, oh, that's what everybody was hearing. That's what we're not hearing.
Yeah.
And I tried to, I didn't want people to come, burn me in effigy for saying that, because every other person in the world thought it was the most amazing first record they'd ever heard. And I tried to explain why maybe I thought like that. And, I really thought hard about it. Why wasn't I blown away by him? I mean, why wasn't I honestly blown away by him?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it. I grew up listening to, records by, Jeff Beck, the first, the Truth, and Beck Ola, and the Zeppelin records, and those early Procol Harum records when, Robin Trower was playing the Les Paul, and, Free, and Paul Kossoff, and, Cream, and the Hendrix records, all that stuff was blowing me away. So I think, not consciously, but sort of in my head, man, I set that bar very high. Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, incredible stuff. It's like, it didn't register. And I felt that way about a lot of other sort of contemporary bands who were good. I thought Aerosmith was like a 5th or 8 Yardbirds, until the second or third record started coming out and they started writing their own stuff. And I could appreciate them. But I thought, Joe Perry? You're kidding me, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it was a little bit of the snob in me. Maybe I didn't want to think that this Edward Van Halen was so amazing, because maybe it, sort of starts erasing what my guitar heroes had done.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
So I don't know. But it didn't take me long to get it and to hear what he was doing, as a tone chaser, then realizing, he had built his own guitars, and how he did everything wrong on those guitars, as you mentioned earlier, nailing the pickups into the body and jerking around with his whammy bars and getting things the same tune.
What do you think it was? What was it about the sound that spoke to you on listen 2 that didn't on listen 1? I have a theory on it, but because I think I understand what you're saying. You have in the line, in the vein, not the line, in the vein of the folks that just a half generation older. He wasn't doing that, or to the extent you could align him, he wasn't doing it any better. but there was something in the sound that was unique, new, and fresh, right?
Right, right. So I mean, look, I think of Jeff Beck's sound on the Truth record. That's when he was playing the Les Paul. But even if
Mhm.
you go up to '75 when he started Blow by Blow and the Strat, which is
Yeah,
basically what Edward played. I mean, those guitar tones were just you could tell one note it was Jeff Beck, and
yeah,
Paul Kossoff, the Les Paul. Edward's tone, I don't know, maybe it was sort of maybe an amalgam of kind of that and what he was going for when in building his own guitars, right? Slamming the humbuckers into a Strat was kind of fusing kind of that Gibson um, uh, with the Fender. But I mean, his chords were so huge, but there was so much definition, in the chords, and you could kind of hear every note, and it wasn't what sort of came later with a lot of the heavier metal stuff where I mean, you can't make out anything. At least for me, that '90s, 2000s metal. I mean, some good guitar players, but those guitar tones were just a
plastic.
little overboard for me. So you could
Yeah,
hear the articulation in every note he was playing.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was kind of a trio with a singer. So when he dropped out, to play a solo, there was no rhythm there, and
Mhm.
yet
yeah.
it was never like there was a hole there. It was just man, I don't know, man. I never heard a Marshall sound like that. But then you have like these insane Van Halen geeks who say, well, man, it wasn't just the Marshall, and somebody said he was, front loading a bandmaster, which I love. It's like the kind of history that is built up around Edward and the guitars and the
Yeah.
pickups and the types of screws. I mean,
It gets crazy.
it is
Yeah.
unbelievable. I can't think of other guitar players who have guys doing such deep dives into trying to figure out every little,
He
bolt
had
that
he
they
had
were playing.
he had
Pretty
a very expensive Gibson Les Paul. He brought two of them over to your house in the book. We talk about it.
He
And
did.
at some point, one of the pickups was missing from one of those guitars. Now, I got to say, he must have taken it out and put it into his Frankenstrat or tested it out or something, because he was a
Yeah.
fan of the Gibson tone, sort of, right?
Yeah,
He sort of
absolutely.
wanted an amalgamation of a Gibson and a Strat, and he came up with his own thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
but he
But
But he
did
wasn't a
like the
double
warm.
humbucker kind. He wasn't a humbucker kind of guy overall.
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
no,
he
not
was, but I
necessarily.
mean, he just changed the tone of it so much. He got a sort of a higher end tone out of it. Gibsons are known for their warmth, and he had more of a edgier tone
Yeah,
that
it
he got
cuts
out of
right
the
through.
Gibson style pickup, which is kind of crazy. Angling the pickup a certain way, and having it inside the body, attached to the body, so the whole body resonates, and you're getting that tone as well. No springs, I mean, just drilled two screws, boom, boom. And I know because I built that goddamn thing, and I couldn't believe all the little tricks in there, and it's just amazing, just the
It's
way it looked.
incredible. Yeah. I mean, what you really think about is why no one had ever done that before. And by
Yeah,
that, I mean basically sticking a humbucker in a Strat. Now, I think guys had been sticking humbuckers in tellies because tellies were typically such kind of a, not a thin sound, but, much more
Yeah,
high end sound,
yeah,
tinny.
yeah.
So that kind of customizing had been done, but no one did it to a Stratocaster. Pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
he's just a genius when it comes to that. He's such a creator, inventor, and throughout his entire life. I mean, he went with the PV style guitars later on, and he could just stuck with that Frankenstrat forever, but he kept
Yeah.
chasing and changing
Yeah,
and metamorphosizing himself into different areas. And the D-tuner, like for instance, like that's a brilliant idea. I can't live without it. I've got it on many of my guitars. Um, Again, if he just did the paint and the D-tuner, he would have been historically famous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
he had it all. He's a talented guy.
Now,
Very
now
talented.
he was, and then so you developed. So we got to jump around a bit because there's so much. There's so much. So tell us about how this relationship developed. I remember the first interview, but you became close with Edward, and it's such a great story because he sounds like a very giving soul.
He was, and I mean, and I may have written about it in the book. How do two people become friends? I mean, how many people do you meet during the course of your life, and you have one or two or three good friends? I mean, is it a similar interest? Is it chemistry? Is it a time and place? I don't know, but there was something. He was a giving soul, so I was immediately. I loved being around the guy. Look, there was never a moment when I was with him when I could completely forget about the fact that this is Edward Van Halen.
Right.
He is changing everything in guitar playing, and he's gonna be a legend. I mean, I understood all that.
Well, that's the balance in the book, and I can relate to that. I have a lot of famous friends. The invisibility thing, we could talk about that. That's happened to me. Uh, you're with this person and you realize why they're famous, but then you treat them, but you're your friend. So it's a weird balance, and sometimes they're in I'm a famous guy mode, and sometimes I'm a friend of Scott's mode, and sometimes it's a mixture of both. Don't print that picture, don't put that video, don't mention that, or they're looking out for their persona, and it's an interesting combination of stuff. It's difficult to be a friend of somebody who's famous. It really is, and it's hard for the famous person too to be difficult with somebody that's not famous.
Right. No, very, very interesting.
Both ways.
And I love being around him. With Edward, it was about respect.
Yeah,
that was a big word for Edward. And I mean, obviously, I respected him as a musician. I mean, that goes without saying. But as a human being, he was always so tolerant, with me, and I just felt safe around him. And
That's
I think
huge.
right, it is huge, and I also think the fact that I met him before that first record came out, right? Because right after that first record comes out, they go out there, and they open for Journey in Montrose, and it's a very short period when he's just,
right.
already by the end of that first tour, he's already huge. So the fact that I kind of met him before he was Eddie Van Halen, I kind of knew when he was still Edward Van Halen,
Yeah.
and he was just amazing. And I think that he felt comfortable around me. He felt safe around me. I don't know, honestly. I mean, I could have been a bank teller or a podiatrist. I don't know. I don't really think it mattered that I was a music journalist. I mean, I think he kind of liked the idea. And there's one little conversation when he's kind of asking me questions. I said, "Oh, how old are you? And how long you been writing?" And I thought that was so cool because over at the pad, you can see him back here. When I used to live up in the Hollywood Hills, every wall is covered with pictures and that kind of thing. And I think he liked looking at that stuff. And we just kind of felt comfortable around each other. I don't want to give the book away.
No.
Fame has its price. And Edward changed. He became a different person. And really the book is me trying to explain what happened or why that happened. I don't really know if I ever came up with the definitive answer, but that's kind of a running theme through the entire book. But he was amazing. I mean, he really was amazing. And
was there ever a moment, Steve, where you're saying to yourself, this guy wants to be friends with me, but maybe he's being friends with me just because I'm a music journalist and maybe I can write a nice article about him?
You know what, man? I've seen that comment. A couple of people said, "Oh, fuck that Rosen, man. Eddie only hung out because he needed to get stories." Look, if Edward Van Halen needed me to hang around because he wanted stories, look, I still would have hung around.
Yeah.
But that was about the furthest thing from the truth because literally by the end of that first tour, I'm sure that every major music publication was knocking at us. I never thought about that. And Edward never said, "Hey man, can we do a story?" It was always me, "Hey Edward, Guitar World wants to do a story. Edward, a German magazine wants a story, man. Can we find some time next week?" But it's interesting you bring that up because a couple of people who I think who just don't like me. I say, yeah, you just hung around with me because you wanted to get a story. Yeah.
No,
You
I'm
don't
not
seem
saying
like
that from Edward's
yeah.
perspective. It may seem like that'd be a good friend to have initially, and then it turned into a real friendship or something kind of
Yeah, it
dynamic.
could
Like,
be.
but
And
who knows? Who
honestly,
knows?
I would like to think I had enough cachet for him to
Yeah.
think like that.
Oh, I
You
was
know, I
hoping
mean,
you were going
look,
to say chutzpah.
yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, look, in my own
Yeah.
defense, in '77, I was one of the main freelancers for Guitar Player, right? Arguably the biggest, musician magazine in the world.
Sure.
I was writing for some foreign magazines, which were like counterparts for Guitar Player in Japan and some European publications. So yeah, I had a little bit of, you know, a little bit of a name.
Hmm.
And, if he did think like that, he certainly never said that to me.
Yeah.
I hope he did, you
Yeah.
know?
I don't think he was treating you as a friend with benefits per se. Honestly, I think there was a genuine connection there. Uh, but in your mind, going back to the book, you're almost saying like, why would this guy want to be friends with me? It's cool, but you're always afraid to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and I thought that's very funny in the book. Different times where you felt like you were a little bit out of your element. Why did I say that? And I think you're really hard on yourself in the book, and I'm like, oh, don't be like that, Steve. It's not like that. I'm sure Eddie didn't think that, but it was fascinating to read your inner thought process when you were hanging out with this legend.
Yeah.
That's exactly. What, me be hard on myself? No. I've only been like that for about the last, 64 years. So,
Yeah.
no, I'll get over it one of these days. It's funny. So I'm writing, and I'm listening to the interviews, right? I have the cassettes, and that's,
Right.
that's where the memories come from. Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about, and that would trigger, and I try to write a little bit about it and capture the moment. And then I'd hear some question, um, in '78 in the first interview, I go, Edward, do you think you're, playing good now, or did you play good at the day in the green? It's like, yeah, he was only playing better than any fucking guitar player on earth. And I asked him, right? So I'm writing it, and I'm thinking, you can't just let that go, So
Right.
somehow it came to me to sort of become the inner voice. I look at it like there's this person looking down who
Right,
knows
right.
everything. He is way smarter than that Steve Rosen dude. And
Yeah.
so we're gonna bust his chops. Rosen, why did you ask that question of him? What were you thinking? You're embarrassing yourself, and that sort of became kind of a thing, a device in the book, which I put under the heading of note, and I would name blue notes or quarter notes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'd
yeah.
never seen another book kind of do that. And I thought,
It's a
hey,
nice vehicle.
it's
It is. Yeah.
right, right. It's
Yeah.
interesting. It really lets you know how I'm feeling and what I was really feeling at that moment. Because a lot of times, you'll just hear the straight interview, and yeah, that comes out. But
Yeah.
you read these little bits, and you really get to
The
kind
inner
of
dialogue is great. It's almost mindful of the old SNL farcical bit where Chris Farley's interviewing Paul McCartney. He goes,
Oh,
"Oh,
right,
why did I
right.
say that? Remember when you're in the Beatles?"
exactly.
I
You're
feel like
exactly right, and that's
you're
one of
like
the most
hard on
brilliant.
so hard
It
on
was
yourself. I'm
brilliant.
like, why did I ask
Yeah.
that? Well, that's fine to ask that.
And
You're
the funny
friends.
thing
Exactly.
is, for what you made clear was there was a real generosity of spirit with Eddie, where he never would even he would do the opposite of making you feel bad if you asked a question that was maybe a Captain Obvious kind of question, or just a little a question. I mean, you have a deep bench of knowledge in the world of guitar, and as you said in the book, every so often your questions wouldn't necessarily reflect that, but he never called you on it, and
No.
that's a nice thing about him, because he could have
That's
certainly.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and that translates to me into respect because he
Right.
could
Yeah.
have done that,
Yes.
right? And it's funny because a couple of times what I tried to do with him, because I knew that he was at a point in time he was starting to do a lot of interviews, and there was going to be similar questions. I get
Yeah.
that, so I really tried to ask him stuff that really was going to make him think a little bit, and wasn't going to just require him to say, "Yeah, man, I use the Strata. Yeah, I use Fender strings, that was going to kind of push him, I tried to dive a little bit more into minutia. And there were a couple times he goes, man, I don't know. I was so on go. A couple times he'd get annoyed,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, I'd back up a little
Pump the
bit. But
brakes a little and
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But other times it would kind of trigger him, and then he'd go off, and when I go off in a positive way, and he'd really think about it, and I could see it. I could look at him and go, "Oh,
Yeah.
I got it." He understood the intent of it. And he used to say, and I believe that he really didn't like to do interviews. Um,
No.
and I know that he didn't.
His
And I know
Howard
a lot of
Stern
guys.
interview was horrendous. He kept fiddling with the knobs and the guitar and stuff. Eddie, come sit down. Like he didn't want to be there. I could just tell he was not having it.
Yeah,
And he's not, and he doesn't seem to enjoy the standard, regular question. On this show, we try to dive into little other areas, right? If you have Ace Frehley on, we're gonna spend 20 minutes talking about Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. I want to know about Ace Frehley. I
right,
want to know
right,
about
right.
your childhood. I want to know when you started to play guitar, who your influence, that kind of thing. But we try not to ask standardized questions. Like we've already gone off on several tangents on this short interview in the first half hour.
And you're giving us a master class in that,
Yes.
because, you know, I mean, the nice thing for you, because I would imagine when he got really famous, you were probably one of the few subject matter experts interviewing him. So, if some, even a standard Rolling Stone writer, as an example, they know music scene and pop culture. They might know a little guitar, but you're a subject matter expert in guitar, and I would imagine that really helped facilitate your connection with him.
Right, that's an excellent point, and it's interesting because I was not as good as the writers from Rolling Stone. I mean, I wrote a couple short pieces. Rolling Stone had amazing writers, but you're right, they didn't have that musical knowledge. I knew I was a very good writer. At moments, I've been really, really good, but I
Right.
believe that, yeah, what I did bring was having that musical side. And I was a decent guitar player. You said I was a very good guitar player. Again, I had, probably in the course of my career, I had one or two good moments. But but what I did understand, I understood songwriting, and I understood harmony, and building up a B verse into a chorus, and resolving that, and how do you find those perfect chords over a solo section, to complement the song. And not that we ever spoke about those specific things, but Edward knew that I knew that. I remember one time he said, "Oh yeah, man, you're a guitar player, you get it." And that was like the greatest compliment.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I brought. Being a very good writer with that musical knowledge. And just enough musical knowledge not to be a nerd about it, but enough to understand when they were talking about
Right.
pickups or songwriting
Or
techniques, recording.
his frustrations, his challenges.
Right.
If you were to interview him or just hang with him after a day in the studio where they couldn't make the magic on that one occasion, and maybe it was going to happen the next day, he could commiserate with you. You know.
Absolutely, and that actually came out quite a bit in the chapter when he's talking about the Fair Warning record, and he goes, "Yeah, man, we came off the road, and we have to go in and do a record." And all the other guys say, "Yeah, well, what do you got, Eddie? What do you got?"
Yeah, the pressure of that.
Right,
Right.
right. And what's interesting about that, and I write about this in the book, is that when he said that to me, he said it in that kind of a tone of voice, and I tried to describe that tone of voice, which is kind of like a offhanded, "Oh, we don't have to do anything because Eddie's going to come up with everything," you know. And so when you hear that again in the audio book, you get that in his tone of voice, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
pressure on him.
I didn't realize his health was well. Aside from incessantly smoking constantly, his losing all that weight and the stress of writing records was really brutal. And a younger Edward Van Halen was absorbing that. Maybe an older one was harder still, right? To come up with all those licks and the pressure of putting out records and hits and staying current and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he wasn't sleeping. He lost all that weight, and he had a bad ulcer, which you can completely understand. And he's talking to me about the ulcer, and he goes, "Yeah, man." He's like, I drink Maalox, and I kind of laugh. And occasionally I would do that because I would think that he had a very dry sense of humor sometimes,
Right.
and I'd kind of laugh, and he sometimes thought I was laughing at him or something he said,
Oh,
which is so
Yeah.
weird. So he thought I was laughing at him because he was taking Malox for this hole in his stomach. And I laughed because my brother had a bad stomach, and I know what Malox is. So it's like
Yeah.
I laughed in
Awful.
recognition
yeah.
of what it was. It's like drinking that chalk, to coat
Liquid
your
chalk.
stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he said, "No, really, man, go call my doctor. He'll tell you." It was so weird that, and that really says a lot about him. He'd be so vulnerable sometimes, and
Yeah.
my response to something he said would touch him in certain ways. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, the sensitivity. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
you could assume, wrongly so, that when someone's rich, famous, handsome, and women throwing themselves at them, that they stop being sensitive. But no, you know.
right. It exactly. And again, that scenario, Dave, came up a couple times. And again, it's in the book. I can't remember what song it is, but there was a solo in some song, and I just said, "Oh my God, that's so fucking amazing!" It's incredible. And he goes, "Yeah, it's okay," or he kind of just slept
Or
it
he
off.
said it's nice.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And he was almost offended by my, psycho fan kind of
Well, right.
response there. It's almost with Edward. I believe that he knew he was a very good guitar player. And you didn't have to tell him that. You didn't have to tell him his solos were amazing. It almost, by doing that, it sort of reduced the artistry of it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you're sitting in there in the room with Da Vinci, go, Leo, what a great fucking photo. It's like, how do you really define how amazing, the Mona
Yeah.
Lisa is? You know
I
what
have a
mean?
little rule that I have where I meet somebody famous for the first time. When I met Steve Vai, for instance, on that metal show, I specifically didn't talk about guitar. I wanted to carry on a conversation, anything but what he's known for. And it was going really well. We were talking about holistic medicine and bees or something. And then Jim Florentine, my friend and one of the hosts of that metal show, came over and said, "Scott plays guitar," because he knew that's my thing, that I wouldn't do. And Steve, this look came over his face like, fan, I got to get away now. I got to
Yeah,
go.
yeah, exactly.
So I quickly said, "Oh, you play guitar too? Are you any good?"
Yeah,
And that kind of
exactly.
diffused the whole thing.
So,
We got to continue our discussion.
yeah, and then there was another time, which is sort of the opposite of that. Edward was talking about some solo that he was really proud of. Maybe "Light Up the Sky." That was one of his favorite songs. And he goes, "Yeah, man, I think I did really good," or something on that, And remembering how I reacted previously, I said to myself, "Don't go crazy, don't go overboard on it." I go, "Yeah, man, it was good," And he said, "Well, didn't you think it was good, man? I thought it was neat." So the fact that he didn't get that response from me, and again, though, it was those little moments that tell you everything about him, right? I could spend 800 pages saying he's the greatest guitar player and on stage and the smile.
Yeah.
That doesn't tell you anything about him. But these little bits,
Yeah.
I keep thinking of the Van Halen record called "Balance." This your whole relationship with Edward was balance.
It was.
Just I don't want to upset him, but I want to be his friend. But I'm in a company of a great guy, and I'm the story of you going to concerts together and him being suddenly become super famous and being swarmed, and you kind of had to take sort of a back seat and not get in his way, but you were worried about him. I thought that was so sweet that you cared about your friend. You were worried about him being trampled or pushed or whatever. And it gets crazy because I've been in situations with my famous friends where I fear for their lives. As a friend, I'm afraid that where's the security? There's crazy people around, and it gets really out of hand. No.
Yeah, absolutely, and that kind of happened. I think you're probably referring to the night I introduced him to Richie Blackmore.
Oh, the great Richie, such a nice guy.
Great guy, and fans realizing that Edward is sitting in the audience, and it was like, man, it was like acolytes coming to see the Pope. I mean, I don't want to upset anybody, but it was amazing. But everybody was so respectful of him, and nobody spilled beers on him and all your thing. It's like I'm thinking, God, if somebody does something, I gotta be that person, But they were all respectful. Like, hey, Eddie's he wants to kind of sit down and watch, and everybody went back to their seats, and it was great. And then later, introducing him to Richie, and I think I'll save that. If you want to know what happens there, go buy the book.
Buy the book. And I'm going to put up, it's a good segue here to put up our little QR code plug here for you. You could scan that with your phone or go to TONECHASER-book.com.
Oh, that's great.
I would encourage everybody, and Steve didn't tell me to say this, I'm saying this out of my own self. And I told David, you got to buy the audiobook and the book. It's the same thing, but it's not the same thing. The audiobook is incredibly captivating. The early cassette tapes on God knows that Radio Shack recorder you had. I was struggling to listen to every word, but it is audible. And in more ways than one, right? I found the audiobook fascinating, as is the written word. So guys, get them both. And Steve, I want to thank you. I did purchase the book, and Steve was nice enough to sign it for me before he sent it to me. And it's sitting proudly here in my studio. I don't know if I want to open it up. It's so beautiful. It's I'm going to get it and show you.
It really is. And the fact that all these years later, you have those audio tapes. Oh my God.
It's beautiful. I mean, talk about a coffee table book. Even if you don't open it and read it, I wouldn't know why you would do that. But if you didn't, I mean, look at the binder. It's beautiful. I mean, this is a really, really beautifully well-made, beautiful.
And look at the, hold on one sec. I'm going to show you something else. Turn the book, and can you see that binding at the top there? Yeah. And at the bottom?
Yeah. Yeah.
What colors are those?
Oh, mine is bumblebee colored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could have picked any colors. I mean,
yeah.
I wanted to create a book that was.
Yes, got the raised lettering on the binding. I mean, you did not go cheap on this. This is beautiful.
Honestly, it was very expensive to put the graphics together for it. And the inside, has the yellow and the black.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And then on the back it's reverse. It's black and then yellow. And I wanted it to be beautiful and be perfect. And I did want to mention one thing about the audiobook. So initially, I was going to find someone else. Well, initially, I was not going to release an audiobook. Honestly, right. I didn't want, even though I've released some of my interviews, I kind of felt that was my stuff. I didn't really want to put that out into the world,
right.
The interviews themselves. So I was going to narrate everything. All the interviews in the book, you're going to hear my voice, The question, when did you start playing guitar? Edward. In my voice. I started, And then, I thought it just didn't work. If it was all narration, as most audiobooks are, then it works. But it didn't. Then I thought, well, how do I do that? Then I thought, okay, I'm going to use the original interviews. So what you're hearing in the audiobook are the interviews that I've done with Edward dating back to 78.
That's funny you say that because when I first put it on, I was like, oh, wow, he's got these cassette recordings on the audiobook. I was completely excited and thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, so, and the little bits where he's noodling on guitar, you can hear him.
Oh, my God.
Right, and there's the day he.
And I heard you noodle. That's why I'm saying you're a good guitar player. Stop it already.
Yeah, that's me.
And you got to play Edward's guitars, which is really cool.
But so I wanted the audiobook to be cool. And you talk about the audio quality. Hey, look, I get it. The only thing that I'm worse at than figuring out how to use fucking Facebook is how to use a microphone and get something on.
As the years progress, the audio is getting a little bit better, though. I have to say
it did, because I got a Sony Pro Walkman.
There you go.
I really did try to take a lot of time to clean some of the tapes, and I think there's one or two that are pretty terrible. But if you have the book, you can kind of do a read along.
But I love that. I'm thinking in '77 or whenever you recorded the first one, I just picture you go, the red button and the white button. Play
Yep.
record. You got it at Radio
Yeah.
Shack. You got the little condenser mic, and you go chicking, and that's it.
Exactly.
Scott, what do you do?
Chicking.
Okay, just making sure.
Exactly. Or the times when I only hit play and didn't hit record.
Oh God,
Like when I
Dave's done
interviewed
that.
Jeff Beck and I rewound to hear it and there was blank space and I fucking didn't interview.
We did that on
half hour.
It wasn't Eddie Van Halen, but we did an entire Guitar Tales episode, and I forgot to hit record. Before we had the service we have now, we had Zoom.
Yeah.
We did a whole interview, and I had never recorded.
We used to be in a big fancy schmancy TV studio, you know, with 3-camera shoot, HD cameras, and everything. Then we realized content is key. We can't beg everybody to drive to New Jersey and sit down with us in front of cameras and talk. It's this is, you know, we can go to the East Coast, West Coast, all around the world, really. You know, we had a guy from the UK a couple days ago. So it's really broadened our guest list, and we're really having a great time talking to people from all over the world, like yourself.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the very positive things about you know, the internet and the digital world.
Do you do a lot of podcasts promoting the book, or is this something?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few actually, and I mean, I love doing them. I mean, I really enjoy. I mean, you know, I get to be on the other side of the microphone now, and and, you know,
we're interviewing the interviewer, which is a little daunting.
Yeah, exactly.
A little nervous about tonight, just a little bit, you know.
Yeah,
a smidge.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I love doing them for sure, and some are better than others, you know, and
they can't all be us, you know.
Exactly.
Hey, I have a quick thing because you know this is one of those. You're one of those guests where it feels like it's been 5 minutes and we're pushing an hour right now, in a good way, which is such a great thing because it just flies. I've been wanting to ask, how did Eddie's sort of artisticness, not a word, how is that impacted when Van Halen was no more? You know, do you think he was still growing artistically after Van Halen?
So that's an interesting question. So you're talking
after Van Hagar, even.
Oh, after Van Hagar, and sort of after Gary Sharon.
In my little brain, after Sammy's gone, then it's not really. I don't know why I think like that, but I do. Let me ask you this: with Gary, was he still growing artistically, or do you think it was kind of?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, look, I think I'm the only person on the planet. You know, I hated the first album, and I loved the album with Gary. I didn't love the album with Gary, but I thought it was a good record. Nobody else did, right? The label hated it. All the fans hated it. I thought Gary was a really good singer and a good lyricist. Fans were not going to allow a third singer in Van Halen, right?
They were not.
It could have been anybody. And Edward had a big hand in that record. I think he produced or co-produced, and you know, it was basically his vision, and it didn't do well.
More stress, and it's got to be like,
yeah. I mean,
you're putting even more of your heart and soul into a project, into an art project, and then it gets lackluster response. I would imagine it's the same for any kind of movie, record. I know my own thing, you know, my own paintings. I go, oh, that's terrible. I can't believe that what happened with that. My own performances. So we're artists are hard on themselves. We want to be creative. We want to have output. And then when your creativity is your profession, there's even more stress, right? To bring it, to stay current, to stay popular. Do you think Edward was ever afraid of being sort of unpopular or being forgotten?
I don't think he ever thought like that. I don't think it really, well, look, I'm sure it mattered to him. I'm going to answer that question. Want to get back to the previous question just to rebound off that. Well, they came out with a different kind of truth. To me, that's not a real Van Halen record. I mean, look, it is, of course, but it's not an album of all original stuff. It's not new stuff. I think that would have been, I think we really would have understood where he was creatively had that been an album of new music he had written. But it wasn't. You know, I mean, maybe some of it was, but look, I don't think he was as good a guitar player in those last Van Halen tours, the reunion tours, as he was in 1978
Hmm.
with
You
the
know,
band and stuff. I don't know, man. It's a good question. It's a tough one to answer. On the other side of it, I think that he did have a lot more music in him,
Mm,
and Edward, obviously he could play keyboards. He could mess around with cello. I think he could play a little bit of sax that his dad taught him.
okay.
I could have heard him doing like soundtrack stuff for movies. I mean, I know
Yeah.
he did the wild, what's it called,
The wildlife.
wild wildlife,
Yeah.
which is
Wildlife.
that was more guitar oriented stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could have seen him going to more kind of orchestral stuff, but funneled through his brain. I don't I don't know. I know that there's a lot more music in there. It would have been nice to have heard an album of newer stuff, in the moment. So I don't know. I don't know. Did Edward ever think about being unpopular? I don't know if he thought like that. I remember asking him once after the first record had come out. I think right before the second record came out. I said, "How do you think this one will do?" Or maybe it was the first record. Sorry, it's hard to remember. He goes, "I don't know, man. Maybe the next one will bomb." You know,
Mm.
He's a little bit glib about it. But I don't know if he ever really worried about it. I asked him once, not if you never played guitar or if you were never successful playing guitar, what would you be doing? And he said, playing guitar, which
oh,
I
I
suppose,
love that answer. I
right,
love
right.
that.
So, yeah, I don't think he ever thought about the popularity of it. I mean,
That's good.
consciously, certainly it had to be there.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
trappings of success were all around him, right? The house,
Right.
the studio, and the cars and stuff. So,
Yeah.
right.
I'm getting to the point in the book where you're getting to meet Valerie Bertinelli, and it's just such a surreal. And I've been in that situation where I knock on the door, and so famous person opens the door. I'm like, "Hi." You don't want to
Yeah,
go, "Holy shit, it's Valerie Bertinelli."
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
Yeah.
"Oh, hi, Valerie. Is Edward home?"
yeah, exactly. And,
I,
and
I
never
was
come out
I
and
was
play.
laughing. It's so great.
Yeah, she was a real sweetheart. I mean, she I know that later on things kind of got a little bit crazy with them, but
Yeah.
you know, in virtually all the times I saw them together, I mean, it was I mean, they adored each other. They respected each other. They were two very high profile people, which obviously has its attendant perks and drawbacks.
Right.
But they were very much in love, and thankfully, she saw me as someone uh, uh, who she felt her husband being around um, was a good thing. She
Yeah.
was a really big supporter of the book. Let me go back real quickly. In 1986, I asked Edward Van Halen if I can write his authorized biography, and he says yes. I can't think of anybody else to write it. It has to be you, which is pretty amazing for him to say
Yeah.
that. And so for about the next 4 years, I started putting together interviews, for what was going to be his authorized biography. Um, and Valerie she was a big champion of that. She understood, I think, because she came from that in the spotlight, TV actress thing, the importance of legacy and legend and kind of what a book meant about a celebrity, And so she says, "Hey man, you got to push him harder. You got to push him harder," because I was trying to get him to sit down with me and do more interviews, and
Yeah.
not musician interviews, but Edward, what was it like when you were 10 years old growing up in Amsterdam, and did you get along with your brother, and did you really start drinking when you were 11, and when did you start smoking, and
Yeah.
did you have any friends? And, what was your relationship like with your relatives? And did you live in a small house or a big house? Did you have money? You know what I mean? All that stuff that everybody
Yeah.
wanted to know. And I could never get him to sit down. His
Mm.
response is, well, man, it's not the right time. If we do it now, then the next record won't be in the book. And it's like I had no response. I go, well, that's true.
That is true.
Yeah.
And I said, but you're always going to be making records, so that argument will be good forever.
Right.
But Valerie was amazing, and I write about one amazing moment with her that I called the chapter is called Scrabble Babble, and we sat down and played Scrabble, and that was fantastic. And if you want to hear about that one, go buy the book.
I like that.
I'm leaving that up there, and then I think maybe that's a good time to wrap it up, Dave. It's for about an hour already.
Yeah, these are my favorite shows when an hour feels like 5 minutes.
Oh, we could do this. We could definitely do 5 hours with Steve, but we'll never.
Oh
make
my
it.
God, I know.
That's what the book is for. We
That's
read the
right.
book and we come back and we talk to him again if you want.
Yeah,
I
fabulous.
wish we had him on the Van Halen special that we did a few years back, which is one of our most popular shows ever. We had a whole panel of guests come on and talk about Edward.
Oh, really?
Including Henry Vaccaro of the Kramer Guitar Company, and Phil X was on, and we had some guys from a
tribute
band that chimed in with the difficulty in covering his material and so on and so forth. So that's a really great show. You can find that on YouTube along with other videos.
Oh, cool.
Dave, you want anything to add? We'll close it up here. And
I don't know if I have anything other than get the book. Get the book. It's
and
so
the
much
audio
fun.
book also.
And the audio book. It's if you are of a certain age, which is most ages, in all honesty, it's a piece of your personal history. So you're getting a reflection of what led to that, because Van Halen is the soundtrack to so much of our lives for people of varying ages. And to sort of see in from the back door of that, of what led to it, is really special. So it connects us all. Anyone who loves rock, this book gives you sort of the backdrop of what helped build childhood, young adulthood, old adulthood, depends on when you were born.
Yeah.
Get the book, audio book and regular book.
And for those listening on the podcast audio and not the video, it's TONECHASERBook.com.
And you can find the audio book and the hardback on my website. So, well, guys, thank you so much.
Steve, it was a pleasure having you. Now you're part of the Guitar Tales family. We'll promote and share just about anything you put up there. If you can finally figure out how to use social media, we'll be right there to help you out.
This was fabulous. We were very excited, and you delivered. So we met a hero, and he didn't disappoint.
Yep. And let's close it out with Ron Bumblefoot, which is probably another person that Steve's interviewed. Hundreds and hundreds of guitar players over the years. Maybe you should get him to have some of these guys do our show. I would never ask you to do that. Okay, listen, have a great night, everybody. This is Scott Guitar Mr. Sangle and
Dave Cohen.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Hey, guys.
Peace and love.
Thank you, Steve. Peace and love.
Bumblefoot Thole, and you're watching Guitar Tales.